they used to laugh at him. His own family, the people who were supposed to love him the most. Every gathering, every dinner, every whispered conversation behind closed doors carried the same sting. He'll never amount to anything. But they didn't know. He was listening every single time. And he was keeping count. His name was Ethan Hale, the forgotten son of the Hale family. His father owned half the city, restaurants, hotels, and a tech company that bore his name in proud silver letters. But Ethan was the black sheep, the quiet one who dropped out of business school after one semester to find himself. To them, he was a disgrace. To him, he was building something they could never understand. Years passed. The family empire grew. And Ethan? He disappeared from the family's radar until one morning he showed up in a navy suit that fit him like a second skin, stepping out of a black car with tinted windows. He walked straight into the glass tower that bore the Hale name, the same tower that his father built, the same tower he was kicked out of when he was 23. But this time, he wasn't there as a visitor. He was there as the new owner. How? Let's go back 6 years. When Ethan left, he didn't leave empty-handed. He took the one thing his family never valued, an idea, a concept his father dismissed as foolish, digital ownership contracts on blockchain. That nonsense will die in 5 years, his father said. Stick to real business. He smiled then, quietly. And that night, he left home with nothing but a laptop, a second-hand phone, and a notebook full of sketches. He built his dream out of sleepless nights, rejection letters, and instant noodles. The years were brutal. He lost friends, money, even his apartment at one point. But his vision, that never died. Then, one day, it worked. His system, a decentralized platform for legal digital contracts, went viral after a startup used it to secure billion-dollar real estate deals with 0 fraud cases. Investors lined up. Within 2 years, Ethan was not just successful, he was powerful. And when the Hale Company began to crumble under old debts and outdated systems, Ethan saw his chance. He didn't buy them out of revenge, at least not entirely. He bought them because it was poetic. His father stares at him, voice trembling. "You can't do this. This company, this legacy is mine." Ethan leans back, calm, almost sympathetic. "It was, Dad. You mocked me when I wanted to build something new. You laughed when I failed. You called me a dreamer. And now the dreamer owns your legacy." His mother whispers, "Ethan, please don't do this." He looks at her, eyes soft but unyielding. "I'm not taking it from you. I'm taking back what was never given a chance." Outside, reporters swarm the entrance. "Ethan Hale acquires family empire," flashes across every headline. That night, he stood in the top-floor office, looking down at the city lights. He had everything he ever wanted: the power, the recognition, the poetic justice. But in the quiet hum of the city below, he realized something unsettling. Victory didn't feel like peace. It felt like silence. And in that silence, he heard the faint echo of his father's laughter again. And for the first time in years, he didn't smile. Because revenge had given him everything, except the one thing he truly wanted: belonging. Ethan stood by the window long after the lights of the city began to fade into the gray of early dawn. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, a man who had climbed the mountain only to find the summit cold and empty. He took a deep breath, the kind that fills the chest but never quite reaches the heart. The quiet hum of the building's air conditioning was the only sound that dared to exist in the silence of his thoughts. Behind him, the door clicked softly. A voice, gentle but uncertain, broke through. "You're still here." It was Clara, his assistant, the only one who'd been with him since the days of ramen noodles and midnight coding. She walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You should go home. You've been up all night." He turned slowly, forcing a half smile. "Home," he repeated, almost as if testing the word. "Funny. I'm not sure I know what that is anymore." Clara placed the coffee on the desk and studied him. "You did it, Ethan. You proved them wrong. You own everything now." He nodded. "Yeah, everything." His voice was low, almost hollow. "Except the part that matters." Clara tilted her head, frowning slightly. "What part is that?" "The part where they look at me and see a son, a brother, not a mistake that somehow got rich." For a moment, Clara didn't answer. She'd seen his rise, seen the sleepless nights, the drive that bordered on obsession. She'd seen him buy back the company with the same calm precision that other people used to order coffee. But she also knew that behind the success was a wound that no signature could heal. "Ethan," she said quietly, "maybe it's not about what they see. Maybe it's about what you see." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in a while. Her eyes were soft, patient, but tired. She had stayed through everything, through the madness and the triumph. "What if what I see isn't enough?" he asked. "Then maybe," she said, "you need to stop looking backward." Ethan turned back to the window. The city was waking up. Cars beginning to crawl through the streets, the light climbing slowly up the glass towers. Somewhere down there, his family was waking up, too. Probably angry, maybe plotting, maybe broken. He didn't know. He wasn't sure he cared. But a strange guilt gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. Later that morning, he visited the old mansion family, the one he hadn't stepped inside in nearly a decade. The gates opened for him now, the guards bowing their heads. He parked beside his father's old Mercedes, still gleaming, but clearly unused. As he walked through the garden, memories spilled over like ghosts. His mother calling him in for dinner, his sister chasing their dog across the grass, his father sitting in the study, his voice sharp, cold, final. He hesitated before entering. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and nostalgia. His mother sat in the living room, a cup of untouched tea beside her. She looked up when he entered, her face older, sadder. "Ethan," she said softly, "you shouldn't be here." He paused, then sat across from her. "It's still my house now," he replied, though there was no pride in his voice. Her lips trembled faintly. "Is that why you came? To remind us?" He sighed, leaning forward. "I didn't come to remind you. I came to understand." She looked at him for a long time, eyes glistening. "Understand what?" "Why?" His voice cracked, just slightly. "Why did you let them treat me that way? Why didn't you ever stop him? Or them?" Her hand trembled as she set the teacup down. "Because I was afraid," she whispered. "Your father was... He believed strength was everything. He thought mocking you would make you tougher. I thought time would fix things. I was wrong." Ethan swallowed hard. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times. Imagined himself angry, victorious, untouchable. But instead, he felt small. The kind of small that seeps into your bones. He nodded slowly. "He built his empire on fear," he said. "I built mine on proving him wrong. maybe we're not so different. His mother's eyes softened. You are different, she said, because you came back. Before he could reply, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hall. His sister, Lena, appeared, her eyes red, her expression hard. So this is how it ends? You show up to gloat? To watch us lose everything? Ethan stood up. Lena, that's not why I'm here. Then why are you? She snapped. You bought the company, the house, the cars, everything. What else could you possibly want? He hesitated, searching for words that didn't sound like excuses. I wanted you to understand that I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because I had to, because no one ever believed I could. Lena laughed bitterly. And now what? You're supposed to be the hero? You think taking everything back makes it right? Ethan felt the anger rise in him again, old and familiar. No, he said quietly. It just makes it fair. She stared at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. Then she turned away. Fairness isn't always justice, Ethan. Sometimes it's just revenge dressed in a better suit. Her words lingered long after she left the room. That night, Ethan returned to the top floor of his glass tower. He sat in the dark, the city lights flickering below him like stars that refused to burn out. On the desk beside him, a file waited, a proposal to merge his company with a major global firm, a deal that could make him one of the most powerful men in the world. But he couldn't bring himself to sign it. Not yet. He looked out at the skyline again, the reflection of his father's portrait behind him on the glass. He whispered softly, almost to himself, You took everything from me, and now I took it back. But why does it still feel like you won? The silence had no answer. Down below, life went on. The world moved, and Ethan Hale sat at the top of it all, powerful, admired, and utterly alone, staring into the city that once mocked him, wondering what victory really meant. Then his phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Just one line. I have something that belonged to your father. Meet me tomorrow, alone. Ethan stared at the glowing screen, the words burning into his mind like a riddle he couldn't ignore. I have something that belonged to your father. Meet me tomorrow, alone. No name, no address, just a location pin dropped in the heart of the old industrial district, a place that had been abandoned for years. The message came at 2:47 a.m., when most of the city slept, and the ghosts came out to whisper. He set the phone down, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He knew it could be a trap, maybe a journalist, maybe a former employee seeking leverage, maybe worse. Yet something deep inside him, that same instinct that told him to walk away from his family and build something new, whispered that he had to go. By morning, the sky hung heavy with gray clouds. The rain hadn't started yet, but the air carried that damp weight that promised it would. Ethan drove himself for the first time in years. No chauffeur, no tinted windows, just him and the low hum of the engine. As the city center gave way to broken streets and rusting warehouses, he couldn't help but think of his father again. The man had been many things. Cold, brilliant, ruthless, but secretive. That had always been his specialty.
He parked beside a half-collapsed brick building, its sign long gone, its windows boarded up. The smell of oil and rain-soaked dust clung to the air. For a moment, he wondered if he was being foolish. But then he saw her, an elderly woman standing by the entrance, wrapped in a long coat, a small leather satchel clutched in her hands. "Mr. Hale?" she called, her voice thin but clear. Ethan nodded cautiously, stepping closer. "Who are you?" "My name isn't important, but I worked for your father many years ago." He frowned. "My father had hundreds of employees. Why reach out to me now?" The woman opened the satchel slowly, pulling out a worn envelope and a silver key. Because he told me to. He left instructions in case things ever fell apart. He said his son would come looking for answers. He hesitated before taking the envelope. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting sharp and familiar. The moment he saw it, his chest tightened. He hadn't seen that handwriting in years. The woman continued, "There's a storage unit 2 blocks from here. That key opens it. Everything he wanted you to know is inside." Before he could ask more, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing faintly against the cracked pavement. Ethan called out after her, but she didn't look back. He stood there for a moment, the key cold in his hand, the letter heavier than it looked. Inside his car, he unfolded the note. "Ethan, if you're reading this, then the company isn't mine anymore. I always knew you'd surpass me. You were never the failure I made you believe you were. You were my test, my proof that strength comes from rejection. I needed you to hate me so you'd learn to fight. I'm sorry for the damage that caused. But there are things about our family you don't know. The empire I built, it wasn't clean. What you've taken over now carries my sins. Don't let them become yours. Find the ledger, burn it, before they find you. Father." Ethan stared at the paper until the ink seemed to blur. His father's voice echoed in his head. Every word, every cruel lesson, every moment of contempt. But now, for the first time, there was something else behind it. Fear. He gripped the key tighter. "What did you do, old man?" he muttered. The storage facility was tucked between 2 crumbling warehouses, its metal doors streaked with rust. His footsteps echoed as he walked down the narrow hallway, stopping at Unit 37, the number engraved on the key. With a shaky breath, he slid it into the lock and turned. The metal door creaked open, releasing a breath of cold, stale air. Inside were boxes stacked to the ceiling, covered in dust. A faint light from a cracked skylight revealed files, ledgers, and on a steel table in the center, a locked black case. Ethan's pulse quickened. He found a crowbar leaning against the wall and pried the case open. Inside lay a thick, leather-bound book and several USB drives. The first page of the ledger was filled with names, dates, transactions, and next to each one, the unmistakable seal of Hale Enterprises. Offshore accounts, shell companies, bribes, hidden partnerships with government officials. It was all there. Decades of buried corruption. He felt his stomach twist. His father hadn't just built an empire, he had built a machine of deception. And now, by owning everything, Ethan owned this too. He flipped through more pages. At the back, a note was taped in the same sharp handwriting. "If this book ever surfaces, the wrong people will come for it. Protect yourself, son."
The metallic clang of a door somewhere down the hall jolted him from his thoughts. He froze, listening. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. He quickly grabbed the ledger and one of the drives, stuffing them into his coat. A shadow appeared at the end of the aisle, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with practiced ease. Not a random trespasser, someone who knew he'd be here. Ethan ducked behind a stack of boxes, his heart pounding. The footsteps stopped near the door. A low voice spoke into a phone. "Yeah, he's here. Just like she said." Ethan's blood ran cold. She said? The woman? Had she led him here? The man's tone hardened. "No, he hasn't found it yet. I'll take care of it." Ethan didn't wait to hear more. He bolted, his shoes scraping against the concrete floor. The man shouted, the echo booming through the corridor, followed by the sharp crack of a gunshot. A bullet tore through a metal box inches from Ethan's shoulder. He ran faster, heart hammering, until he burst out into the open air. Rain had begun to fall, sharp, cold, relentless. He jumped into his car, the tires screeching as he sped away from the warehouse. His breath came in gasps, his hands gripping the wheel until his knuckles turned white. in the passenger seat. The ledger lay open. A single name circled in red ink on the last page. Clara Morgan. His eyes flicked toward it, disbelief washing over him like ice water. The woman who had stood beside him for years, the one he trusted most, the one who told him to stop looking backward. Now, her name was written in his father's ledger, and under it, in his father's unmistakable handwriting, were two words that chilled him to the bone. Final partner. Ethan's grip tightened on the steering wheel until the leather creaked under his fingers. Rain streaked across the windshield like veins of liquid glass, the wipers fighting to keep pace. His pulse thud so loud it drowned out the rhythm of the storm. Clara's name glowed in his mind like a scar burned into his thoughts. Final partner? The words didn't make sense. Clara had been with him since the beginning, long before the money, long before the company's success. She had worked beside him through sleepless nights, lifted him when he wanted to quit, believed in him when no one else did. She was his confidant, his anchor. How could she possibly be part of this? He pulled the car into an empty parking garage beneath one of his own buildings, his breath fogging the glass. The air smelled faintly of concrete and rain. He sat there, staring at the ledger in his lap. His father's words echoed again. Protect yourself, son. For the first time, he felt a tremor of fear. Not the kind that comes from danger, but the kind that comes from realizing everything you know might be a lie. He opened the ledger again, scanning the pages for Clara's name. It appeared several times, buried between transactions and coded messages. Her signature wasn't there, but there were initials, CM, linked to transfers from offshore accounts dated back nearly 7 years, the same time she'd met him. His mind raced. Could his father have placed her in his life on purpose? A mole? A manipulator? Or was it something deeper? Something even Clara didn't know? The elevator dinged faintly in the distance. A sound so ordinary, yet it made his chest tighten. He shoved the ledger under his seat and killed the car's lights. Footsteps echoed through the garage. Slow, deliberate. The sound of heels tapping against the wet floor. A familiar voice called out, calm and unhurried. "Ethan? Are you down here?" He didn't answer. He pressed himself lower, watching through the rearview mirror. Clara stepped into view, her silhouette framed by the dim light above the elevator. Her hair was damp, her coat clinging to her shoulders. She looked like she'd just come from the rain. "I went by your office," she said, her voice carrying across the space. "They said you left hours ago. I've been trying to reach you." He stayed silent. She took a few cautious steps forward, her eyes scanning the rows of cars. "Ethan, what's going on? Why are you hiding from me?" He finally stepped out, the sound of the car door slamming cutting through the echo of rain. "You tell me," he said, his tone sharp. "What's your name doing in my father's ledger?" Clara froze. Her face didn't flinch at first, just a small, controlled exhale. "Ledger?" "Don't play dumb," he said. "I found it. Offshore accounts, coded transactions, everything. And your initials, Clara. 7 years ago, the same time we met." Her eyes flickered, a faint shadow crossing them. Then she took a step closer. "Ethan, listen to me." "No," he snapped. "You listen. Did you work for him? Were you his spy? Were you sent to control me?" Her expression softened, but her voice remained steady. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" His voice rose, echoing off the walls. "Because right now, it looks like the one person I trusted most was part of my father's empire of lies." Clara hesitated. The tension between them was thick enough to choke on. Then she spoke quietly. Yes, I worked for him, but not the way you think. You... what? She said. He found me when I was 19. My family was drowning in debt. He promised to pay everything off if I kept an eye on you. He said you were unstable, that you needed someone to make sure you didn't destroy yourself. His stomach turned. So all of it? Helping me? Supporting me? It was just part of the job? At first, she said softly, at first it was, but then I saw who you were. You weren't unstable. You were brilliant. You didn't need control. You needed freedom. So I stopped reporting to him. That's when the money stopped, too. I kept working with you because I believed in what you were building. He stared at her, struggling to breathe. You expect me to believe that? I don't expect anything, she said. But your father wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Those ledgers, Ethan, they don't just expose him. They expose people far worse. Politicians, judges, military investors. He didn't build an empire. He built leverage. The words hit him like a blow. Leverage. That was how his father had stayed untouchable. That was why he had built his fortune in shadows. And now all that leverage, those names, those deals, belonged to Ethan. He rubbed a hand across his face, pacing. So what now? You want me to burn it like he said? Clara hesitated. If you do, they'll come for you anyway. They won't believe it's gone. But if you use it, if you control it, you could own more than your father ever did. Her tone was steady, persuasive, almost dangerous. Ethan looked at her and saw something he couldn't name. Fear, loyalty, ambition, or all three woven into one. That's what you want, isn't it? You want me to use it.
She met his gaze without blinking. I want you to survive. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the low hum of the lights. Ethan stepped closer until they were only a few feet apart. Tell me the truth, Clara. All of it. Every secret he told you, every deal, every person involved. Her jaw tightened. If I do, you'll never see the world the same way again. Then show me. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. Tomorrow night, midnight, I'll take you to the vault. He frowned. Vault? The real one, she said. The one your father never wanted anyone to find. She turned to leave, her footsteps echoing into the darkness. Ethan watched her go, every instinct in his body screaming that he shouldn't trust her, but every part of him knowing he didn't have a choice. He climbed back into the car, drenched in the heavy silence left behind. The ledger sat on the passenger seat, open to Clara's name, the ink still damp from the rain. He stared at it for a long time, until his reflection blurred against the page. Then his phone buzzed again. Another message. No number, no name. Just a single line. Don't trust her. She killed your father. His breath caught in his throat. The glow of the phone screen lit his face in cold, sterile blue. The message pulsed once more before fading to black, leaving him staring at his reflection in the glass. She killed your father. The words rang in his head like a bell that wouldn't stop. He sat frozen, the rain hammering against the windshield in furious rhythm. 1,000 thoughts surged through him at once. Rage, disbelief, confusion. It couldn't be true. His father had died of a heart attack 2 years ago, or so the report had said. He'd attended the funeral himself, stood beside the casket, heard the priest's words, watched the dirt cover the polished wood. Unless that was never the truth. He gripped the steering wheel, his mind replaying every moment with Clara, every late night, every gentle reassurance, every time she'd been there before anyone else.
Had she been protecting him or watching him? Manipulating him? He started the car and pulled out of the garage, tires screeching against the wet concrete. The rain fell harder now, blurring the world into streaks of silver and shadow. He drove aimlessly at first, his mind racing faster than the car. The ledger offered no clues, no sender, no location, nothing traceable. Whoever sent it knew how to cover their tracks. He thought of calling her, confronting her, but something held him back. If the message was true, warning her might only make her hide deeper. If it was false, he'd tip his hand to someone playing a far more dangerous game. At a red light, he took out the ledger again, flipping back to the pages near the end. His father's handwriting filled the margins, frantic and uneven, as though written in haste. Between the lists of transactions and coded numbers, he saw something that made his pulse quicken. A small symbol drawn beside Clara's name. A triangle inside a circle, marked in red ink. He'd seen that symbol before. He remembered it from one of his father's old letters, sealed with the same mark. His father had once told him it represented the consortium, a shadow group of investors and power brokers who operated above the law. Rumors said they controlled governments, markets, even wars. Ethan had always dismissed it as paranoia. But now, seeing it linked to Clara, he wasn't sure what to believe. The light turned green. He drove to the one place he thought might hold answers, the old Hale estate. The mansion was dark now, nearly empty, except for a caretaker who stayed in the back quarters. His mother and sister had left days ago, unable to bear living in a home that no longer felt theirs. The gates creaked as he entered, the driveway lined with skeletal trees swaying under the storm.
Inside, the silence was suffocating. His footsteps echoed through the vast halls, each sound swallowed by the weight of memories. He went straight to his father's study, a place he'd avoided since childhood. The scent of old leather and dust still lingered, mingling with the faint trace of cigars. He switched on the desk lamp. The soft light revealed the same mahogany desk where his father had once sat, issuing orders that shaped the lives of thousands. Ethan ran his fingers across its surface until he found a small indentation on the side panel. He pressed it, and a hidden compartment slid open with a faint click. Inside was a thin folder marked Confidential, Private Holdings. He opened it, revealing documents with names, account numbers, and photos of people, some familiar, others not. But one page made his stomach twist. It was a surveillance report dated 3 years ago. The subject? Clara Morgan. It described her movements, her background, her communications, but the last entry stood out. Subject exhibits signs of disloyalty, contact to be severed, contingency initiated. Contingency. His father's favorite word for removal. Ethan sank into the leather chair, the edges of the folder trembling in his hands. Could his father have tried to eliminate her? Could she have retaliated? The questions piled on top of one another until they became unbearable. The thunder rolled outside, shaking the windows. Somewhere deep inside the house, a door creaked. He froze. "Ethan?" The voice echoed faintly through the hall. Familiar. Soft. He stood slowly, heart pounding. The sound came closer. Clara stepped into the study doorway, her coat soaked through, her hair clinging to her face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone low and guarded. "I could ask you the same thing," she said, her gaze flicking to the open folder on the desk. "You've been digging into things that were meant to stay buried." He took a slow step back. "You knew he was watching you." She nodded once, no surprise in her eyes. "Of course I did. That's why I stopped reporting. I knew he wouldn't forgive me." He clenched his fists. "Did you kill him?" The question hung between them like a blade. Her expression barely changed, but he saw something flicker behind her eyes. Pain, hesitation, maybe even guilt. "He was dying," she said finally, "but not of a heart attack. He was poisoned. The doctors didn't see it because the dose was slow, deliberate." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Then you expect me to believe you didn't do it?" She stepped closer, the stormlight flashing across her face. "If I wanted him dead, I could have done it years before. I wasn't the only one he crossed, Ethan. He had enemies far bigger than either of us. The consortium wanted him gone. He was becoming unpredictable." He swallowed hard. "And you?" "I tried to save him," she said quietly. "But by the time I found out what they'd done, it was too late. I stayed close to protect you. You're the last piece of leverage they can't control." The rain battered the windows, louder now, like a warning. Ethan stared at her, searching for any hint of deception, but her eyes held only exhaustion. He wanted to believe her. God, he did. But doubt gnawed at him. "Then who sent me that message?"
"What message?" she said. He showed her the phone. She read it, her face tightening. "They're watching you already," she whispered. "They know you found the ledger. That's why we can't wait for tomorrow. We have to go to the vault tonight." Ethan hesitated. "Where is it?" She took a breath. "Under the old docks. Your father built it years ago to hide what couldn't be traced. But it's not just storage. It's where the consortium kept their backups. If we can get inside, we'll know everything." He stared at her, the storm raging louder outside, his thoughts a storm of their own. Finally, he grabbed his coat. "Then let's finish what he started." Clara nodded once, her expression unreadable. As they stepped out into the rain, Ethan couldn't shake the thought that somewhere in the shadows, someone was already watching. Someone who knew that before the night was over, not everyone would walk away from the truth alive. The rain hadn't stopped since they left the mansion. It came down in relentless sheets, drumming against the hood of the car like the heartbeat of the city itself. Ethan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping the cold metal of the ledger, his knuckles white. Clara sat beside him in silence, eyes fixed on the window, where lightning occasionally carved thin cracks of light through the darkness. Neither spoke for the first 20 minutes. The tension between them had thickened to something almost tangible. Every streetlight, every flash of passing headlights seemed to illuminate the questions hanging unspoken in the air. Ethan finally broke the silence. "If this vault is real, and if what you're saying about the consortium is true, why didn't you tell me sooner?" Clara turned her head slowly. "Because you weren't ready. You wanted revenge, not truth. There's a difference." He gave a bitter laugh. "And now?" she said. "Now you have something they want. The ledger changed everything. You're not just your father's son anymore. You're the one holding the knife over the throat of the entire machine." Ethan pressed harder on the gas, the car slicing through the empty road like a dark arrow. "You keep talking in riddles. If my father built this empire on blackmail and corruption and they killed him for it, why keep me alive?" Clara hesitated. "Because you're useful. You have the public face, the business reputation, the sympathy of a man who took back his family's legacy. To the world, you're clean. To them, you're cover." Her words sent a chill crawling up his spine. He tightened his jaw. "And to you? What am I to you, Clara?" She looked at him for a long time, her eyes softer now, but shadowed with something unspoken. "You were the only part of this that ever felt real." The words hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to ask more, to demand clarity, but the docks appeared ahead, vast, dark, and silent except for the hiss of rain striking the corrugated metal roofs. The car rolled to a stop near the edge of the waterfront. Waves lapped against the pylons, black and cold.
"This way," Clara said, stepping out into the downpour. Ethan followed her through a maze of rusted containers and abandoned cranes. The smell of salt, oil, and decay filled the air. She led him to a small warehouse at the far end, its entrance half buried behind stacks of old shipping pallets. A single flickering bulb cast weak light over the door. Clara reached into her coat and pulled out a small metallic card, sliding it through a hidden panel beside the door. There was a faint beep, followed by a mechanical click. "My clearance still works," she murmured. The door swung open, revealing a narrow stairway descending into darkness. Ethan hesitated. "How deep does this go?" "Far enough," she said. "This place was designed for secrecy, not safety." They descended in silence, the air growing colder and heavier with each step. At the bottom, a long tunnel stretched ahead, lined with concrete walls slick with condensation. The hum of distant machinery echoed faintly. Clara moved quickly, flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. "Your father built this with private contractors. No one ever knew the full layout except him. He called it the deep chamber." Ethan's voice echoed slightly. "What exactly are we looking for?" "The backups. Files, data, names, records of every deal, every bribe, every alliance. It's the real currency of the consortium." They reached a steel door marked with faded stenciled letters, "Authorized personnel only." Clara keyed in a code on an old keypad, but the light stayed red. She frowned. They changed it. Before Ethan could speak, a faint click echoed behind them, the sound of a gun being cocked. "Step away from the door," a voice commanded from the shadows. Ethan turned slowly. A tall man in a black coat emerged from the darkness, his face half hidden, the barrel of a pistol aimed squarely at Ethan's chest. His voice was calm, professional. "Mr. Hale, Miss Morgan, you've both gone far enough." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Who sent you?" "The same people who sent the message. You shouldn't have come here. The ledger belongs to us." Ethan felt his pulse surge. If the consortium wants it, they can come and take it themselves. The man smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I'm doing." He stepped forward, gun steady. Clara moved subtly, placing herself between Ethan and the gunman. "You don't understand what's in that vault. You open it without the right failsafe and the entire network burns. All their names, all their assets, gone. Even yours." The man's eyes flickered, a brief shadow of hesitation. Ethan caught it and seized the moment. He lunged, slamming his shoulder into the gunman's arm. The gun fired, the sound deafening in the narrow tunnel. The bullet ricocheted off the steel door, sparks flying. Clara kicked the man's leg, sending him sprawling. Ethan grabbed the weapon, his breath ragged. The man groaned, clutching his side. "Who sent you?" Ethan demanded. The man's lips curled into a bloodied smirk. "You think your father was the only Hale working for them?" Before Ethan could ask more, the man pulled a small black device from his pocket and pressed a button. A sharp beep filled the air. Clara's eyes widened. "Get down," she shouted. A blast ripped through the tunnel, the force knocking them both backward. The walls shuddered, dust raining from the ceiling. Ethan hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. When the smoke cleared, the gunman was gone. Only the echo of the explosion remained, and the steel door now hung ajar, warped by the blast. Clara coughed, struggling to stand. "They tried to destroy it," she said. "They'd rather burn the evidence than let us have it." Ethan staggered to his feet, pain lancing through his shoulder. "Then we don't have much time." Together they pushed through the twisted doorway into the vault. The space beyond was massive, a cathedral of servers and terminals stretching into the darkness, cables snaking along the floor like veins. Red emergency lights blinked in slow, eerie rhythm. Rows of data drives hummed softly, their glow reflected in Ethan's eyes. "This is it," Clara whispered. "Every secret your father ever kept, every deal the consortium made." Ethan stepped forward, staring at the maze of machines. For the first time, he understood the scale of it all, the web of power his father had built, and the price it carried. But somewhere above them, faint and distant, another sound echoed through the tunnels, the whine of engines, the crunch of boots, and the metallic rhythm of more men coming. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. They found us. Ethan reached for the nearest terminal. Then let's make sure it was worth it. Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard, the glow from the terminal lighting the tension carved into his face. Lines of encrypted code scrolled upward like green ghosts against black glass. Clara stood beside him, her eyes darting between the screens and the tunnel entrance. The sound of boots was getting louder, measured, organized, too precise to be anyone but trained professionals. How long will it take? She asked, her voice sharp and low. I don't know, he muttered. The system's locked behind multiple encryption layers. I'm trying to pull a local copy before they can shut it down remotely. She leaned over his shoulder, scanning the data streams. They'll fry it if they know you're inside. The servers are rigged with a failsafe. Once it detects unauthorized extraction, it wipes itself clean. His jaw tightened. Then we'll have to be faster than their trigger finger. She turned, peering down the corridor where the dim light flickered. The air was filled with the hum of the servers, steady but alive, like the heartbeat of something vast and dangerous. She could hear faint voices now, men calling orders, the clatter of weapons being readied. Clara, she hissed, we have maybe 2 minutes before they're through that door. Then buy me 2 minutes, he said without looking up. Clara's hand slipped to the small holster inside her coat. She drew her gun with quiet precision, checking the chamber before moving toward the shadows near the tunnel entrance. Ethan didn't notice her glance back at him once, the look of someone about to make a choice that can't be undone. The footsteps grew louder. The first man appeared in the doorway, a shadow framed by the red glow of emergency lights. Clara fired once, the shot cracking through the air. The man dropped instantly, his weapon clattering to the floor. Shouts followed, boots pounding, a rush of movement. Clara ducked behind a pillar as bullets tore into the concrete around her. Clara! Ethan shouted. I said keep working, she yelled back, her tone fierce. He bent over the console, adrenaline cutting through his panic. The final firewall blinked in defiance. And then, with a flicker of code and a surge of sound, the system opened. Data poured into his portable drive. Names, accounts, transaction logs, confidential communications, photographs. The entire architecture of the consortium began to unfold before him like a living map of corruption. Got it, he shouted. Clara fired again, dropping another figure that tried to breach the door. Then move, she yelled. Ethan yanked the drive free and shoved it into his jacket. He grabbed the ledger, tucking it tight under his arm, and sprinted toward her. Together, they darted into the side corridor just as a grenade clinked against the metal floor behind them. The explosion ripped through the vault, a thunderous roar that shook the walls. Fire rolled down the corridor like a living creature, chasing them. Ethan threw his arm around Clara and pulled her behind a heavy doorframe as the blast wave swept past. The lights flickered, and then the world fell into a stuttering half-darkness. They stumbled forward through the haze, coughing. Back exit, Clara rasped, grabbing his hand. There's a service shaft at the far end. It should lead up to the pier. They ran through the smoke-filled passage, the ground slick with water and debris. Alarms wailed overhead, their shrill cry bouncing through the metal tunnels. When they reached the shaft, Clara kicked open a rusted grate and climbed first, her movements quick despite the exhaustion weighing on them both. Ethan followed, gripping the cold iron rungs until his palms ached. When they emerged, the rain hit their faces like shards of glass. They were back at the edge of the docks, the sea churning black and violent below them. In the distance, faint blue lights cut through the storm, vehicles approaching, maybe police, maybe something worse. Ethan looked back at the warehouse, flames licked from the windows, smoke twisting into the sky. Whatever secrets the vault had held were now turning to ash, except the one copy he'd taken. Clara caught her breath, wiping the rain from her eyes. "You have the drive?" He nodded. "Every file, every name." She gave a grim smile. "Then you have what they fear most." Before he could respond, headlights flared from the road behind them. A black SUV skidded to a stop, doors flying open. Armed men poured out, moving with silent precision. "Go!" Clara shouted, shoving Ethan toward the far end of the dock. He hesitated. "I'm not leaving you." She met his eyes, hers fierce, unshaken. "You'll never make it out if you hesitate. Take the drive, Ethan. Get it to someone who can expose them. Don't let my part in this be for nothing." A bullet whizzed past, striking a metal beam inches from her head. She turned and fired back, covering him as he ran. The rain blurred everything into chaos. The gunfire, the shouts, the roar of the sea. Ethan ducked behind a stack of crates, clutching the drive like a lifeline. He peeked out just in time to see Clara take a hit to the shoulder. She stumbled, but didn't fall. She fired again, dropping one of the men closing in. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to go back, to pull her away, but before he could move, a hand clamped around his arm from behind. He spun, slamming his elbow into the stranger's ribs. The man grunted, but didn't let go. Another figure appeared beside him, a woman in a rain-soaked coat, her face partially hidden by the shadows. She raised a silenced pistol and pointed it at his chest. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice smooth and cold, "you've been very busy." Ethan's pulse hammered. "Who are you?" "The one trying to clean up the mess your father left behind. Now hand over the drive before you make this worse."
The dock stretched endlessly ahead, the rain turning the wooden planks slick beneath his feet. Behind him, he could hear them shouting, chasing. Another shot rang out, grazing his arm. He stumbled but didn't stop. At the end of the dock, an old fishing boat was moored, its cabin lights flickering weakly. He jumped aboard, untying the rope with shaking hands. The engine sputtered once, twice, then roared to life. As the boat pulled away from the dock, Ethan looked back through the curtain of rain. Clara was still standing, firing, holding them off as long as she could. Their eyes met for an instant, a flash of connection amid the chaos, and then a sudden burst of fire lit the pier. He shouted her name, but the storm swallowed his voice. The boat cut through the black water, the city shrinking behind him. In his pocket, the drive burned with the weight of 1,000 secrets, and somewhere deep inside, he knew the night wasn't over. The consortium wouldn't let him vanish, not with their truth in his hands. The boat sliced through the violent waters, the rain coming down in sheets that stung Ethan's face like needles. Every wave threatened to throw the vessel off balance, but he gripped the wheel, his knuckles pale, his breath shallow. The storm howled around him, but inside his chest was a different kind of tempest. Anger, grief, confusion, and a gnawing sense of unfinished war. He kept glancing back at the receding docks, barely visible through the haze of rain and fire. Clara was gone, swallowed by the chaos he'd left behind. The image of her standing in the storm, bleeding yet unbroken, burned into his mind. He had wanted to go back, but every instinct told him that if he stopped, everything she had done, everything she had sacrificed, would have been for nothing. The drive in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He touched it once, reassuring himself it was still there, then looked ahead at the faint outlines of the city skyline emerging from the fog. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, he saw the shadow of another boat following him, sleek, dark, unmarked. His heart dropped. They were already coming. He throttled forward, pushing the old fishing boat to its limit. The engine sputtered in protest, but the vessel lurched faster through the waves. He could see the other boat now, faster, cleaner, clearly military or corporate grade. It was cutting through the water like a predator locked on prey. He reached for the radio, static buzzing through the speaker.
Mayday, this is Vessel 279. I'm being pursued by armed assailants. A voice cut in, cold and sharp. Mr. Hale, you've made this very difficult. He froze. The voice was female, calm, controlled, unmistakably the same woman from the docks. I admire your persistence, but you're wasting your time. That data doesn't belong to you. It never did. He slammed his hand on the radio. You burned down my home, killed my family, tried to erase me, and now you're telling me what belongs to me? You misunderstand, she replied, almost pityingly. This isn't about ownership. It's about control. The consortium built the world you live in. Your father just happened to be a useful piece in it. You're not fighting corruption, Mr. Hale. You're fighting gravity. The radio hissed with static again, and then silence. He looked over his shoulder. The pursuing boat was gaining, its searchlight cutting through the storm, a harsh white beam sweeping across the water. He ducked instinctively and steered hard to the right, veering toward the mist-covered side channels near the old industrial port. The light swung past him, briefly losing sight, and he used the moment to slip between two abandoned cargo ships rusting side by side. The fishing boat scraped against a hull with a metallic screech, but he didn't stop. He killed the engine and waited in the darkness, listening. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of the rain hammering on metal. Then, faintly, the whine of the pursuing engine faded away. He exhaled shakily and slumped back in the seat. His heart was still racing, his hands trembling. He reached into his coat and pulled out the drive, holding it up to the weak glow of the cabin's emergency light. The casing was dented, scratched, but intact. Inside it, he knew, was the truth, the full network of the consortium's reach. Politicians, financiers, military contracts, assassinations, manipulation on a global scale. He needed somewhere safe, somewhere he could disappear, regroup, analyze, and release the data when the time was right. But he had no allies left. His father's contacts were either dead or turned. The police were compromised. Even the press was laced with the consortium's influence. As he thought, his mind turned to one name, someone from years ago, before the Hale name had been a curse. Adrian Cross, a journalist who'd tried to expose his father's dealings before the scandal had ruined everything. Adrian had vanished after his story was buried. Some said he'd been bought off. Others whispered he'd gone underground. If anyone could help him get the truth out safely, it was Adrian. Ethan started the engine again, steering slowly through the fog until the shadow of the old port faded behind him. His thoughts churned with every wave. What if Clara hadn't made it? What if she had been captured instead of killed? He hated how easily the doubt crept in. Lightning flared again, briefly revealing the outline of a coastal road winding along the cliffs. He spotted a small, half-collapsed dock and guided the boat toward it. The vessel bumped against the wood with a dull thud. Ethan tied it off quickly, grabbed his bag, and leapt onto the slippery platform. The rain was still relentless, soaking him in seconds, but he pushed forward. A small fishing village lay just beyond the cliffs, dim lights glowing in a cluster of houses, smoke rising faintly from a chimney or two. He walked fast, head low, until he found an old inn with a flickering sign. Inside, the warmth hit him like a wall. A few patrons turned to look at the drenched stranger, but no one said a word. He rented a room upstairs under a false name, paying in cash. Once the door shut behind him, he finally let his guard down, just a little. He peeled off his wet jacket, dropped his bag on the bed, and took out the drive. His laptop flickered to life, its cracked screen glowing dimly in the dark. As he plugged the drive in, the screen filled with folder names, encrypted, labeled in his distinct shorthand. He scrolled through them: Project Meridian, Ghost Ledger, Observer Program, Asset Registry. Each one was a bomb waiting to go off. He opened one labeled Directive 12. Inside were pages of documents, lists of companies, politicians, and covert operations spanning decades. But one line stopped him cold. Adrian Cross, status contained. Ethan's breath caught. There was a file attached, surveillance footage. He opened it. The screen flickered, showing a grainy image of a dimly lit room. A man sat chained to a chair, bruised but unmistakable. Adrian. His head lifted weakly, eyes staring directly at the camera. Then a voice, cold, emotionless, said, "You should have stayed silent, Mr. Cross." The recording cut out. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. The rage burned away the exhaustion. They're still holding him. Somewhere. He opened another file, searching for any mention of Adrian's location. Coordinates, safe houses, anything. And then he saw it. An address marked Archive Facility 9.
His pulse quickened. He scribbled the location down. But as he was about to close the file, a faint sound caught his ear. The creak of the floorboards outside his door. He froze. Another step. Slow, careful. He reached for his gun. The next second, the lights went out. The room plunged into darkness, swallowing every trace of light. Ethan's breath hitched, muscles tensing as his fingers wrapped around the cold steel of the pistol. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder outside and the faint, almost imperceptible creak of the floorboards. Closer now, just beyond the door. He moved silently, every sense sharpened. His heart pounded so loudly he feared whoever was out there could hear it. The laptop's glow had vanished, leaving the room a shadowy blur. He crouched low, inching toward the wall, gun raised. A soft metallic click echoed from the hallway. A knife, a gun, maybe a lockpick. Then, the door handle turned slowly. Ethan held his breath. The door opened a fraction, letting in a sliver of light from the corridor. Rain-wet boots stepped onto the threshold, one, then another. Whoever it was moved with the kind of deliberate precision that only came from training. Ethan didn't wait for a face to appear. He lunged forward, grabbing the intruder's wrist and slamming it against the wall. A suppressed groan escaped from beneath a hood. They struggled briefly, the gun clattering to the floor. The figure twisted, faster than he expected, driving a knee into his ribs. Pain shot through him, but he held on, yanking the hood back. For a split second, time froze. It was Clara. Her face was pale, streaked with rain and blood. Her shoulder was bandaged hastily, her eyes wide, wild even. Ethan staggered back, stunned. You're alive?" "Barely," she rasped, catching her breath. "You didn't think I'd let them finish the job, did you?" He lowered his gun, but didn't relax. "You were supposed to be dead, Clara. I saw the explosion. I know," she interrupted, cutting him off with a faint, exhausted smile. "They wanted you to see it. They knew you'd run. It's the only way they could track where you'd go." Her words sank in slowly. "You're saying they let you go?" Her expression hardened. "No, I escaped. But not before I learned something. The woman on the radio, her name's Evelyn Kaur. She's not just part of the consortium, she runs it now. Your father used to answer to her." Ethan's stomach turned. Kaur. I've seen that name in the files. She's listed as a strategic director. She's more than that. She's the one who ordered your father's death. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the raw edge in her gaze. She wasn't lying. Ethan ran his hair through his hair, pacing. "Then she's after me because she thinks I'll use the data to expose her." Clara nodded. "Not just that. She's afraid you'll finish what your father started." He stopped cold. "What do you mean?" She hesitated before answering. "Your father didn't build the consortium to serve them. He built it to control them. Every dirty politician, every banker, every general, he kept records on all of them. That's what the ledger really was, insurance." "And this drive?" Ethan asked, holding it up. "The key," she said simply. "Whoever holds it doesn't just have evidence, they have power.
enough to bring the consortium to its knees or to take its throne. He stared at her, disbelief and dread twisting together in his chest. You think I'd want that kind of power?
Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. I think your father did, and I think that's what Evelyn Kaur wants you to become. Another Hale she can mold, another puppet with your father's face. Ethan turned toward the laptop, its dead screen reflecting his faint outline in the dark window. The rain outside blurred everything, making it look like the world itself was dissolving. Then we destroy it, he said quietly. All of it. Clara stepped closer, her voice low but urgent. If you destroy it, they'll keep hunting you. But if you use it, you could turn them against each other, expose Kaur, dismantle her control from the inside. He looked at her sharply. And you think that's better? Becoming what I hate? I think survival is better than martyrdom. Your father tried to burn them down and died for it. If you want to win, you have to play their game and play it better. Before he could answer, a soft beeping sound filled the room. Ethan's eyes darted to the laptop. The screen flickered back to life, and on it a message appeared in stark red letters. Trace detected. Data extraction active. Termination sequence initiated. Clara's face went pale. They found us. Ethan yanked the drive from the laptop, but it was too late. A timer appeared on screen, counting down from 60 seconds. Get your things, she shouted, rushing to the window. They'll triangulate the signal. Ethan grabbed his bag, stuffing the drive and gun inside. The moment Clara pulled open the window, a drone buzzed past, its searchlight slicing through the rain like a blade. It hovered, scanning. Then a red targeting laser appeared on the floor. Down! Clara yelled, shoving Ethan to the ground. The drone fired, the glass shattering in an explosion of sparks and flame. They crawled toward the hallway as smoke filled the room. This way, Ethan coughed, pulling her toward the stairs. The inn had erupted into chaos, screams, confusion, people running as the drone circled back. They burst through the front doors into the storm, sprinting through the narrow streets. The village lights flickered as more drones descended, their hums blending with the thunder overhead. Clara pointed to a dark alley between two buildings. There. They ducked inside, pressed against the wet stone walls, gasping for breath. The air smelled of salt and ozone. Ethan turned to her. We can't keep running like this. They'll never stop. Clara's eyes darted toward the end of the alley, where a narrow path led to the cliffs. Then we make them stop. Archive Facility 9. That's where Kaur keeps her personal data mirrors. If we get there first, we can erase everything, wipe her entire empire clean. He hesitated, rain dripping from his hair. That place, it's in the files. It's not just a data center. It's a fortress. Clara's voice softened. Then we break in, one last time. He looked at her, bloodied, soaked, unyielding, and felt something shift inside him. The fear that had haunted him since his father's death began to harden into resolve. He nodded once. Then we finish this. Clara's lips curved into a faint, grim smile. Good, because they're already moving to intercept us. He followed her gaze to the end of the alley. The faint silhouette of a convoy appeared through the sheets of rain. Black vehicles, headlights slicing through the fog, growing larger by the second. Clara chambered a fresh round. We don't run anymore, Ethan. He raised his pistol beside her, eyes fixed on the approaching lights. No, he said, we fight. And as the first vehicle screeched to a halt, the storm finally broke. Not the kind that falls from the sky, but the kind that comes when vengeance meets truth head on. The night roared like a living thing, rain slicing through the air as if the heavens themselves were raging. The convoy ground to a halt at the edge of the alley, engines growling, doors flinging open with military precision. Shadows poured out, black-clad soldiers with rifles raised, moving like a tide of darkness. Clara and Ethan stood shoulder to shoulder, the cold wind whipping around them, water streaming down their faces. "Ready?" she asked, voice steady despite the chaos.
Ethan nodded, eyes locked on the approaching figures. Let's end this. The first flash of gunfire erupted, lighting the rain in brief bursts of fire. Bullets tore into the walls as Ethan returned fire, the muzzle flare illuminating the determination carved across his face. Clara moved like lightning, precise and unyielding, every shot deliberate. The air filled with thunder, not just from the storm, but from the fury of their defiance. One by one, the soldiers fell, but for every one that dropped, 2 more emerged from the shadows. Clara ducked behind a stone pillar, reloading. "We can't hold them here," Ethan's voice cut through the gunfire. "The cliffs, we can use the storm. Come on!" They broke cover, sprinting through the maze of streets as bullets whizzed past. The sound of the ocean grew louder, closer. Lightning split the sky, casting the cliffside in stark, ghostly light. Ahead, the ground dropped away into the black fury of the sea below. They reached the edge, the rain stinging their skin, and there it was, a narrow service tunnel carved into the cliffside, partially hidden by rock and overgrown vines. Clara recognized it instantly. "That leads to Facility 9, she shouted over the wind. "We're closer than I thought." They ducked inside, the tunnel stretching deep into the earth. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them, boots pounding, radios crackling. Ethan gripped his weapon tighter. How far? Just ahead, past the next junction. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber, steel walls, glowing monitors, and an elevator descending into a deeper abyss. The words, "Archive Facility 9" flickered across a digital sign, half faded and flickering. They stepped inside the elevator, and the doors slid shut with a metallic hiss. For a moment, only the hum of machinery filled the silence. Ethan exhaled, glancing at her. "When this is over, what happens to us?" Clara met his gaze, her eyes softer now. "When this is over, there will be no us, Ethan. Just whatever's left of the world we save." The elevator stopped with a low chime. The doors opened to reveal a cavernous hall filled with rows of data cores, massive humming structures of light and steel stretching into the darkness. At the far end stood a wall of glass, and beyond it, a single control terminal pulsing with blue light. And there she was. Evelyn Core stood waiting, dressed in black, her posture composed and regal. She was older than he expected, her silver hair tied back, her presence commanding, like someone who had long stopped fearing consequences. "Ethan Hale," she said, her voice smooth, almost motherly. "You've done well to come this far. Your father would be proud." He leveled his gun at her. "My father was a criminal." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "So are you. You just haven't accepted it yet." Clara stepped forward, weapon raised. "Step away from the terminal."
Evelyn didn't flinch. "You can destroy this data, yes, but do you understand what that means? Every account, every transaction, every piece of leverage, gone. The balance of power collapses. Wars will erupt. Economies will fall. The world will burn because you couldn't carry the weight of its corruption." Ethan's grip tightened. "Then let it burn." Her smile faded, the warmth draining from her face. "You think you're different from your father, but you have his blood, his ambition. He tried to erase me once too, and like him, you'll fail." Clara's voice was ice. "You first." Evelyn raised her hand. "Wait." She tapped a small console on her wrist, and a holographic image flickered to life beside her. Surveillance footage, live and sharp. A room filled the display, sterile, white, and windowless. In the center sat Adrian Cross, bruised but alive, restrained to a chair. Ethan's heart dropped. Evelyn tilted her head. He's in this facility. You destroy this place, he dies with it. Clara looked at Ethan, her voice low. She's lying. Evelyn's gaze shifted to her, calculating. Am I? You of all people should understand sacrifice, Miss Morgan. You've made enough of them in the name of your illusions. Ethan stared at the hologram, Adrian lifting his head weakly, meeting the camera's eye as if he could somehow see Ethan standing there. Every instinct screamed that it was a trap. But what if it wasn't? Clara took a step closer. Ethan, look at me. This is what she does. She makes you choose between truth and guilt. Your father made that mistake, and it cost him everything. Evelyn's tone turned cold. Your father didn't die. He submitted. I offered him the same choice, power or destruction. He chose power. The words struck him like a physical blow. You're lying. Am I? She said softly. Who do you think taught you to win at all costs? Who built the world that crushed you and gave you the means to rise from it? For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. The rain, the thunder, the gunfire, it all vanished. Only her voice echoing through the sterile chamber. Then something in him broke. He stepped past Clara and toward the terminal, gun still aimed at Evelyn. If my father built this system, then I'll be the one to end it. Evelyn's eyes flickered, surprise, then a faint trace of disappointment. So be it. Clara moved to the control panel, typing rapidly. Overriding security. Once I trigger the core meltdown, there's no turning back. The floor trembled as the facility's alarms blared. Red lights pulsed overhead. Evelyn straightened, calm even as chaos erupted around her. You're destroying order. No, he replied, his voice low but steady. I'm destroying control. He fired once. The bullet shattered the glass between them, striking the terminal. Sparks erupted, and the control system exploded in a burst of light. Evelyn staggered back, eyes wide, her perfect composure finally cracking as the room filled with the shriek of alarms and the smell of burning circuits. Clara grabbed his arm. We have to move. They ran. The floor shook violently, walls splitting as the facility began to collapse. Sirens wailed, steam hissed from ruptured pipes. Behind them, Evelyn's figure disappeared into the chaos, swallowed by fire and shadow. The elevator was dead, so they climbed. Up emergency ladders, through maintenance shafts, lungs burning, hearts pounding. Above them, the storm raged louder than ever. When they finally burst through the surface hatch, the wind nearly knocked them over. The cliffside was crumbling beneath their feet, the ocean roaring like a beast below. Clara grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the edge. A helicopter approached through the rain, black, unmarked, the blades slicing through the night. Clara fired a flare into the sky. For a moment he thought it was rescue, but then he saw the symbol painted faintly on the side, a phoenix encircled by a serpent, the consortium's crest.
Ethan turned to Clara. They're not gone, are they? Her eyes met his, tired, fierce, unbroken. No, but now they'll have to rebuild, and maybe this time they'll know fear. The helicopter circled once, then veered away into the darkness, leaving them standing together on the ruined cliff as dawn broke across the horizon. The first light of morning spilled through the clouds, painting the shattered sea gold. Ethan looked out over it all, the wreckage, the fire, the end of everything he'd known, and felt something like peace. Not victory, not relief, just the quiet understanding that he'd finally broken free. Clara touched his shoulder. What now? He looked at her, the wind tearing through his soaked hair. Now, he said softly, we start again. But this time, no more kings, no more shadows. And as the rising sun burned through the storm, the world below trembled, not with fear, but with the fragile, dangerous promise of freedom.